Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. I'm Brian, Mr. Smith. This is my kitchen. Yeah, hopefully the view is going to be changing here in about a week or two. We start, I think, moving into our new house. It's actually this week, starting tomorrow. I'm going to start hauling stuff over and at least sticking it in the garage of our new place. They're still working on it, getting some things done, and but we're in transition. So that being said, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad you found me. If you're returning for more, I'm glad you're back. Hands down. Uh, if you are new, we do quite a few things on this channel. I'm basically just doing a weekly document of my life to ensure that my great grandkids know about me and learn something, and can maybe be a little self-efficient. They say within 2 generations you're usually forgotten. I don't want to be forgotten. As much as I'd like to be lived forever, I know that's not going to happen, but I can live forever through these videos and keep it in mind. Anyhow, that being said, on Tuesdays we like to chit-chat about all kinds of stuff. Wednesdays we usually cook. Thursdays we do some baking. We also do some canning on this channel. I am a fish keeper, although at the moment, other than just literally keeping my fish, I'm not doing a whole lot with them. So, every once in a great while, I still show my fish, but they're the same fish that you can see on the first few videos. And we do some woodworking, we do some gardening, it's just, what do? We teach kind of homesteader style or prepare style videos, for, what you may need for long winters or whatever. But today we're gonna talk about some canning stuff. I thought that would be a good Tuesday topic. First, I do want to talk about real quick. I'm not gonna dwell on it long because I dwell on it all the time when I'm in the car on the way to work and coming home. Is the people who feel the need to drive a bazillion mile an hour down the road. Now, the main road I take to work every day is a state route, and they even put up a safety zone in between cities. I live in Newark, Ohio, and I drive through New Albany, Ohio, or to New Albany, Ohio, and then through it and beyond. And there is a 14-mile stretch between the two that people just feel the need to go an ungodly speed. Now, I'm not a grandpa driver, but I don't go 20, 30 mile over the speed limit, and I don't drive like I'm trying out for a Formula One team. Yet there are several people that feel that they need to do that. I don't get why. Leave your house a little earlier. That's my best guess. You are going to end up wrecking and hurting yourself or hurting somebody else or killing you or somebody else. Nobody wants to lose you. Never mind the fact that when you're driving a big, 3,500 or 350 truck or a big Suburban or SUV, you are part of the reason why gas prices are as high as they are. It's based on supply and demand, if you didn't know that. The more you use, the less the less there is, because they can only produce it so fast. And never mind the fact we're running out. And you drive the price up. Or if you do the speed limit, you use a little less gas, then they don't have to produce it quite so quickly, and you bring the prices down. Please quit being part of the problem and be part of the solution. All right, now that I got that off my chest, which has nothing to do with today's topic, but I felt the need to get that out there. Slow down, wear your seatbelt, things of that nature. All right, so anyhow, I wanted to talk about some things with canning, because I watch just a ton of YouTubers on YouTube that can, and there are some that don't play by the rules at all. There are some that play by some of the rules of canning, and then there are some that are spot on, that if it's not a tested recipe, they don't make it. Now, I kind of fall in the middle of all that. For the most part, we use tested recipes. Most of the recipes I show you are tested recipes. They either come from the USDA, the National Society for Food Preservation, which is part of the USDA, or the Ball Book of Canning, or something, a recommended canning book. But there are some people that don't follow that, so I want to make you somewhat aware of what to look for, especially if you're new, okay, and you're watching videos, because there's a lot of things out there that are being processed and canned or put into jars that shouldn't be. Well, that you can run a risk with. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do it. I'm just going to say that if you're not careful, you can make somebody very sick. And I'm about to tell you what it is that can make you very sick. Or at least what is one of the main things that can make you sick. There are certain things you shouldn't process. You should never do rice. You should never do noodles. You shouldn't do any kind of dairy products. No milk. No, nothing like that. Eggs, like that. You should never process with flour. Home canning wise, flour or cornstarch. Because they can cause you problems down the road, and you don't want to use a thickening agent. Those things I just mentioned, which are the main things that are labeled as things you shouldn't can, and there are more. And if you get on like the USDA's website or the National Food Preservation website, or even look in the bulk canning book, it lists why. Like with noodles, you could can them, except for what happens is if you've ever noticed that when you boil noodles, you get like a foam on the top and all that as they're boiling. Well, what happens is the noodles will produce that foam, and it can cause a back pressure inside your jar over time, and it can cause your lid to pop off or not seal properly. Things like that. So you want to stay away from those items that I've named. Plus, like I said, there's a few more. You got to do your research. Look on a trusted site. There's most colleges have extension offices for the USDA, and they can answer any of your questions. If you can email them, you can call them. But if you're uncertain about something, look at a trusted source to do that. The thing we're trying to prevent, other than, just molds and, most common bacteria that can, make you sick, is botulism. Okay? Botulism is really bad. Up until the 1950s, botulism was the causes of 3,000 to 4,000 deaths a year. And it was from people, canning, just from canning, from processing and keeping their own food. And it was either not done properly or it wasn't stored properly. Now in 1950, the USDA got involved because, too many people dying from this. We got to find out why and what's going on. And what they found out was that botulism, or hold on, I got notes right here, and I can't read them real well because I have my glasses on. It's Clostridium botulinum. Yeah, Clostridium botulinum, which is an organism, but they found this organism, and they find it on everything. It is literally on everything. Everything in your house, everything outside, all your food, it's on everything. And that's what they found. So they came up, I'll explain more about that here in a second, but the USDA came up with guidelines based on stringent testing, and made recipes, but you made guidelines for you to use so you don't have to, you minimize that risk. All right, so, and they're good enough that it went from 3,000 to 5,000 cases a year of people dying or getting violently ill to botulism to now 100 cases per year, which is kind of a drop in the well. It's still a lot of people in my mind, but that's a lot less, and so you want to follow guidelines, Now, as far as it being on everything, it is, okay, but there are two different forms. You have, it's what is called a spore stage, all right, which is what you find on everything. And with that, it's inactive. You can eat it. When you eat a raw carrot, it's got botulism on it, but it's in its spore stage. So when it hits your stomach, the acids in your stomach just kill it. So it doesn't affect you. It doesn't make you sick. But that's why they tell you, like, babies from newborn to their first year can't have milk. Can't. There are certain things they're not allowed to eat, and that's because, or raw honey for that matter, because there could be botulism present in that raw honey, and there's more than likely botulism in the milk, and their stomachs aren't strong enough to kill it yet, so that you can make your baby really sick. But that's why they tell you not to do that. It's just because of botulism. Now, what happens is with botulism is it goes from a spore to a vegetated state if it meets certain conditions. All right, and those conditions are, they're not. Well, here, I'll just tell you. Okay, you need something that's a low acid food. Okay, you need something that involves low or no oxygen, which we're depriving our jars of oxygen when we can them. They need moisture. Most of the things in our jars are wet. They need a protein source. So, any vegetable that you can, any, meat that you can, soups, whatever, have a protein. And they need low temperatures, like room temperature. If those criteria are met, which we do all of that in canning, the botulism can go from a spore to a vegetated state where it'll eat, it'll breed, multiply, and a botulism, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, so our best bet is to follow the rules, especially in the beginning. Follow the rules, that way you don't get sick. Now, the biggest cause of botulism in the canning world is when you can vegetables and you don't do it properly. Anything you can that you process and jar has the potential to give you botulism. Potatoes are probably the worst, as far as things that if you don't can proper can make you sick. So that's something to look at. If you follow the guidelines, especially in the beginning, when you're first starting learning to can, grab like the Blue Book of home canning. It has like 500 recipes in it, and they're all tested. They're all tested recipes. And if you look on the USDA's website, tons of recipes. The Food Preservation website, recipes. Not quite as in depth, but they still have recipes on there. That's how I learned how to can chicken, hamburger, roast beef, roast pork. There are, like, you don't really want to can bacon or ham. The density of a cured product like that is too thick and you may not get it hot enough. And if you don't get it hot enough to kill all the germs, botulism, the kill zone for botulism for the spore, because you can't kill a spore unless you get the heat all the way up there, is 240 degrees. As a matter of fact, it's 240 to 250 degrees, which means with a low acidic food to can, you have to pressure can it, which I'm going to talk about acidities here in a second. You have to pressure can it in order to get it up to that 240, 250 degree range in your pressure canner for a certain length of time, a determined length of time by a tested recipe. Where some people get in trouble with that is they may pressure can it, but they may not pressure can it long enough because it's not a tested recipe that determines, this amount of time. Now, you will find some repetitiveness in the times, like quarts of hamburger and most meats are, 90 minutes, pints are 75 minutes. Water bathing's kind of the same way. So you have to until you can try to kind of figure out what's water bath, what's pressure can, but those are two, and that will help you if you get the ball blue book. It walks you step by step through all those processes. In the very beginning, it tells you this is what you're looking for, this is why. It talks about pH and acidities and non-acidic foods. So if you're starting out in canning, keep that in the back of your mind. Use tested recipes. Now, I'm not saying that as you learn the rules and you do this for a while, you can't play. I mean, me and Chris, play with different recipes a little, but we know what to look for. And we don't play as far as, oh, let's put spaghetti noodles and rice in this. Like I said, most things like that, say like you want to do chicken noodle soup. Well, just don't put the noodles in it. Make it a chicken soup, and then when you go to reheat it, boil some noodles to put in it. Done. Chicken noodle soup. Say you're making a beef stew, and your beef stew recipe calls for flour. So wait until you go to heat it up, because you're going to reheat it. It's not like you're going to eat it straight out of the jar. When you go to reheat it up, then add your flour or your cornstarch. Red beans and rice. You can do the beans. You can get the red beans going. You can put all your spices in there. So now you're down to just cutting up your andouille sausage and making some rice. It still saves you time. There's two reasons really to process and can or jar food. At least two in my mind. Quick, easy meals, and to have food on the shelf when in an emergency situation. Like when we can hamburger and chicken, yes, we have it down there for like if we get snowed in or like been going on with the pandemic, there's lockdown. We have that. When we had to quarantine, that was a lifesaver. But then at the same time, we do it because there are nights when I don't get home until later. I've worked 12 hours, or Chris has put in a 12-hour day, and we just don't feel like spending an hour and a half in the kitchen cooking dinner. It's late, we're tired, we just want something quick. So we can go downstairs and grab a thing of Chipotle chili, or grab a thing of barbecued pulled pork, and boom, we've got dinner. That's why we do it, So, that being said, best advice, trusted recipes, use your resources, and look it up if you're not certain. Okay? If you're not certain. If you want to know some good YouTubers to follow, I can give you a handful. Another thing you should never can is butter. While I was sitting there thinking about it. Why take it out of your fridge just to put it in a can? That makes no sense to me. Now, there are some things like ghee and purified butter that the process you use to make those makes them shelf stable. Not forever stable, but shelf stable long enough that they could last a year. Once again, I don't know why you would want to do that necessarily, but I can think of a few reasons, I guess. But at the same time, Crisco is shelf stable, and that's pretty much the same purpose. Or same thing. They even make a butter flavored one, or lard for that matter. Shelf stable. Good for a minute. Okay, so let's talk about the pH scale for a second. Alright, because I found this in the beginning. Now, in the beginning, when I first started taking care of fish, because with fish, you need to know your pH scale. Some fish can handle a higher pH, and I'll explain that in a second. Some fish can't. They need a neutral to almost a base style or alkaline style water. Very clean, no acidity to it at all. The pH scale in my mind runs weird. Okay, so 0 to 7. All right, on the pH scale. And pH scale runs 0 to 14. 0 to 7 are all your acidic things. Okay? 7 is neutral. So that's like this glass of water right here. Okay? 0 being the most acidic. 6 being the Yeah, 6 being the least acidic, 7 is neutral, 7 to 14 are your base things when it comes to food. That would be. And I don't even know of food that's in that 7 to 14 range. That would be things like if in your kitchen, that would be dish soap, ammonia to clean with. A lot of cleaning supplies other than your acids. But most of your cleaning supplies are base. They're from 7 to 14. All right, so we're going to focus on 0 to 6. All right, the acid scale, basically. Now, you'll hear the term low acid foods and high acid foods. Now, in my mind, that automatically jumps to 0 being low acid, 6 being high acid. Well, flip that, okay? 0 is the most acid, 6 is the least acid, okay? And the less acid you have in your food determines the amount of acid you have in your food depends on how you can it, whether it be water bath or pressure can. So examples of that. The most acidic at 2 in the canning realm, so you got 0 to 2, there's not really a whole lot of anything, is vinegar. All right? Distilled vinegar at 5%. You want 5% vinegar. Okay, and which is most vinegars you buy right there, like it says right there, it says diluted with water to 5% acid strength. Right there. All right? So you want that's canning vinegar. Okay, well, I mean, it's vinegar for anything. You can put it in your laundry to break up dog smell. You can cook with it, clean with it. You can do everything with 5% vinegar. But that's the most common one on the. This has got a lot of acid in it, and this is used in. I mean, we put vinegar in salsa. We put vinegar in a lot of things we cook. Or can process. Another alternative to that, and you'll find this in a lot, and these are just common. There's a lot more to these. Like you can get a citric acid. Depends on what you're canning. This is why I said until you've got maybe a year or two of canning under your belt, follow trusted recipes. But the next one on the scale, which is at also about 2 to 3 on the pH scale, is lemon and lime juice. Okay, now when it comes to canning, unless the recipe calls for it, don't use a fresh lemon. Stick almost every trusted recipe, tested recipe has a juice in it. Okay, that calls for it. Some things are acidic enough you don't need that. Like most jams and jellies, you don't really need those. There's enough acidity in it that you can get away with that. The closer, okay, so from 0 to 6, 4.6 is about the cutoff for high acid to low acid. All right. All these so far, we're at well under 4.6. Now, where you hit 4.6 at is 4.6 to 5 at is, and even 6 for that matter. So your low acid foods. So we just discussed what would be high acid fruits. And if it's not a high acid enough fruit, the instructions will tell you to add something like lemon, lime, or vinegar to it. But 4.6 to 6 would be things like tomatoes, or peppers, whether it's hot peppers, bell peppers, flaming hot, melt your face off peppers. They all run from 4.6 to about 6. Onions is another one that is a low acid food. So the bigger the number, the lower the acid level. Remember, 7 is neutral. All right, so those are the things you want to look for. Now, let's say you've gotten to the point in your canning life. Now, like me and Chris have been canning for quite some time. Probably the better half of 10 years. But in the beginning, we canned things like applesauce, tomatoes, jellies, and jams. Those are all great places to start, by the way. That's what got us into canning. Those are easy, simple, easy to follow, simple things to can and process that, for the most part, require just a water bath, which is really easy. And then we started getting into meats and some stews and canning beans and things like that. Beans is a classic example of a lot of people that, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, don't do it right. Dry canning beans, it's done by 1,000 people on YouTube. Matter of fact, we're going to do it as soon as we move into the new house, and I'm going to show you how we do it. Okay? I'm not going to tell you it's wrong to dry can beans, so to speak. But what I will tell you is that's not how we do it. We do it by a more approved method. Because you can can any bean. You can't can lentils, but you can can any bean other than lentils. They're not considered a bean in the eyes of the USDA. So and dry canning is simply you just put the dry beans in the jar, at a certain amount, fill it up with water, and pressure can for 90 minutes or 75 minutes, depending on the size of the jar. The proper method, and this all comes down to texture, honest to God, texture of the bean. How firm do you want it versus soft? The proper way, at least the USDA way to do it, is to basically quick soak your beans, or just soak them overnight, whatever, however you want to do it. But we quick soak, which means we put the beans in a pot, cover them with water 2 inches above the beans. We bring it up to a boil, turn the heat off, put a lid on it, let it sit there for an hour. All right. Then we drain the water off, put fresh water on it, bring it up to a boil, and we let it boil for 30 minutes. Then we shut it off, we drain them, and then we can them. That gives them a head start. By doing that, and I know I'm getting off topic from the pH, but there's only one more thing I have to say about the pH. But by doing that, it does soften up the beans a little bit, which we want. It takes less time to cook them in the long run. But when you put your beans in the jar and you fill it the rest of the way full of water or whatever broth or seasonings you want to put in it, those beans are eventually going to start soaking up that water. So what happens is it may soak up a lot of that water. Now, if it soaks up a little bit, which beans have a tendency to do even when you do them through a quick soak, it's okay. But if that happens to drop below half of your jar, those beans aren't any good anymore. You run the risk of bacteria growing, potential botulism, and you've pretty much just wasted your beans. So we do it to where we do the quick soak. That way they absorb some water, and when they sit in the water we put them in, along with our dry spices, the water doesn't drop as much, if at all. Dry spices is another thing. You can use any dry spice you want. Not so much fresh, but dry, like in the can, in the jar, like on my spice racks over there, you can, any of those are game, right? Sage has a tendency, though, to get bitter if you're not careful. All right, so anyhow, back to the pH thing. Real quick, this is the last thing I'm going to touch on this for today. Our salsa that we made. Matter of fact, if you look at last week's videos, I incorporated it into the apple pie biscuits. It is not a completely tested recipe. It is actually a now, I think, 3rd generation canning recipe that we have, but everything that's in that recipe is pretty much the same as any of the salsa recipes you would find in an approved site or for a tested recipe. We juggled it a little bit, but I mean, we also know some rules. Like, we also know, like, for every 12 cups of a low acid food, you should put a cup of a high acid food in. Things of that nature. Where like tomatoes are a little lower on the acid scale, they get a higher number than, say, the peppers do. We know by mixing that up, plus we added vinegar to it, and we added lime juice to it. So we dropped that number considerably away from even 4.6. That way we know it's safe. But let's say, as soon as my batteries come in, I'll show you this. But I actually have a pH tester, okay? And we're going to take a look and see. We're going to see where my salsa and the pizza sauce that I just made is on the pH scale. We're going to see if it's safe. Should we have water bath canned it or should we have pressure canned it? That's a different story for a different day, but we're going to take a look at it. I'm kind of curious. Until the other day, I watched a lady on YouTube. It's her channel is called Rose Red Homestead, and she's the one that I got most of this information from. I know that she knows what she's talking about only because I've been doing this long enough and researching. Research is important. That I know she's on the right path. You guys, if you get a chance to check out her channel, if you're interested in canning, she can provide you way more information than I have on my channel at the moment. But at most of the canning she does is science-based. She follows the rules. She plays by the book. She's a good sport. She's got tons of recipes. She taught me how to make my apple pie filling. The pumpkin that we're about to use here in a couple days for the cheesecake, pumpkin cheesecake. Bam, right there it is. Her recipe. Her canning procedures. My apple pie filling for the apple pie that you saw, the apple pie biscuits you saw last week. That's hers. She is one of the better ones to check out. Now, there are some people that say that she's a little too stringent, but she is a great reference. Hands down. All right. So that's really all I had to say today on canning. But I wanted you to know at least the beginnings. If you start watching people on YouTube and you're just starting out, be aware of these things. Botulism is your enemy, and there are certain steps you need to take to get, to make sure that you don't make you or your family sick. It can hurt you. It can put you in the hospital. It can make you deathly ill. It can kill you, and we don't want that. Nobody wants to lose you. Our family loves your family, and the last thing we want to see is for you to disappear. I would feel horrible. So remember that. Think about the pH scale. If you start canning and you try some tested recipes, all you got to do, like if you try my salsa, once you've heated it up in the pot, get a test strip, a Littman's test strip. They're designed for food, and put it in there and see what the pH comes out to be. Or these aren't expensive. They're like $10-15. We own a couple of them. I use one strictly for fish tanks. The other one I use for pH testing my food. And they're accurate. But they're not pricey. And see where it stands. Be curious. Curiosity won't always kill the cat, but it might make you a better canner, a better baker, a better cook. Give you a firmer understanding of how, to work with your food and how your food can work for you back. All right, so that's my spiel for the day. If you're one of those, I dare say, morons that are doing 100 miles an hour down the road, slow down. Like I said a minute ago, you're going to kill somebody or yourself, and we don't want that. We want to keep your dumb butt around. And as far as the gas prices go to that, remember, you're part of the problem, not the solution. So let's calm it. Wear your seatbelt. Get vaccinated if you haven't yet. Please. There are far too many of us still getting sick. A friend of mine and Chris's, who was firmly against her and her family getting sick, not only did her and her entire family get COVID, but she damn near lost her life. Put her in the hospital for 2 weeks. They thought for sure they were going to put her on a ventilator. Luckily, after 2 weeks, she finally started to recover. So my blessings do go out to her and her family, though. I love her to absolutely no end. She has been a dear friend of our family now for decades, and her loss would be great if that would have happened. But don't make that part of your family story. Okay? Go get vaccinated. Doesn't hurt. They didn't put microchips in it, and it's not a way to control you. Okay? I promise. All right. I love you. I love you very much. Tell somebody else you love them and love them very much. It's going to make their day a whole lot better. It'll make you feel better to tell somebody that. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're probably going to do Salisbury steak or cube steak. Not sure which yet, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. All right? Oh, Thursday. Oh, Thursday. Pumpkin cheesecake. Can't wait to show it to you guys. All right, till tomorrow for dinner. Stay safe. Go get vaccinated. All right, love you. Bye.